Let's travel to the tropical islands of Indonesia, where we can find two iconic primates of Southeast Asia, orangutans and Siamang Gibbons. Like most primates in the region, these are sadly endangered, threatened by modern developments. And welcome back to the channel. My name is Callum and I have the next episode for Omaha's Henry Doorly Zoo Recreation. Not one, but 4 habitats for Omaha's first outdoor habitat built. With the orangutan's infamous reputation in game, this is not going to be an easy episode. The Hubbard Orangutan Forest is one of 2 great ape complexes at the zoo, named for Theodore Hubbard, a cardiologist from Omaha. The zoo bears the Hubbard family name for 3 locations: the Orangutan Forest, the Gorilla Valley, and Expedition Madagascar, all located on the left or north side of the zoo. The legacy of several Omaha family names can be seen across the zoo. We already saw the lead jungle, but also the Scott family taking up the right or south side of the zoo, most notably the aquarium and African grasslands. The Orangutan Forest was the most recent renovation at the zoo, completed just in 2024, to bring the area up to the zoo's theming standards for guests. The forest originally opened in 2005 along with the Gorilla Valley. While the Omaha Zoo prioritised orangutan care when designing the exhibit, this left a rather minimalistic aesthetic which didn't offer the same experience as other areas around the zoo, of which the Omaha has grown a name for in recent years. The new renovation had a key vision: transport both orangutans and humans to the rainforests of Borneo and Sumatra, Indonesian islands of Southeast Asia. Modelled temple ruins, waterfalls and ample climbing frames is surely a key to an immersive rainforest experience. Everything from the fencing to entire building designs blends Omaha's modern aesthetic with the tropical rainforest theme of Indonesia. We can easily see this starting off with the entrance sign. A large and colourful sign welcomes guests to the orangutan forest using a rustic tree frame and clever use of the wooden art to add a visually unique sign that brings the island aesthetic to the zoo. If we couldn't tell by this point, the Tropical Park DLC is absolutely perfect for such an area. The design choice of the scenery pieces almost matches exactly to all the designs featured in the real zoo, allowing me to replicate the intricate Indonesian style with ease. For example, one of the most difficult parts of an Indonesian theme is replicating the traditional house roofs. The zoo in particular uses the iconic curved roofs of the Ming Ang Kabu traditional houses found in West Sumatra. A unique example of a thatch roof longhouse called a Rumah Gardang. I do apologise if these pronunciations are completely wrong. These style of houses, for example, serves as a residence hall for family meetings and for ceremonial activities. Some famous examples include multi-tiered upswept gables, which we can see at the zoo as well, in the form of viewing shelters for both the orangutan and Siamang habitats. These houses are distinctly different from the Toba Batak buildings of northern Sumatra. Pieces in the tropical park make it much easier to build these large, saddle-backed roofs, of which Chester Zoo's Islands is famously known for its extensive use of that architecture design. Using this building design is the zoo's elevator building in the orangutan forest. It's called the elevator building because there's a pair of elevators inside. Genius, isn't it? Elevators are needed in this part of the zoo because the orangutan forest is literally built on a steep slope. The zoo doesn't want guests to traverse extremely steep hills unlike a certain zoo in California, so this building greatly assists guests. In my recreation, the difference is 18 meters or 60 feet, quite the elevation difference and a pain to landscape with. This is more or less the bottom of the zoo in terms of elevation, allowing me to easily landscape future parts of the zoo, such as the Asian Highlands. The elevator building features a highly detailed interior in this building, featuring wooden roof arches, air conditioning pipes, there's a wacky conservation wooden net lights, and lots of wooden floral wall patterns. Now obviously, because this episode is rammed full of details, the interior will be skipped for this building. Those wanting to see an interior build this episode, the indoor orangutan habitat will be shown later this episode, or skip to that part if wanted. Moving on from the elevator building, the upper orangutan forest is the first section of animal viewing. This features 2 habitats for Bornean orangutans, a large habitat for females and another smaller for males. These are still fairly large habitats though, fully meshed around with tall climbing trees, allowing an immersive look into the climbing abilities of orangutans and allowing these tricky primates to actually climb and possibly branchiate. Bornean orangutans are great apes, the largest of all arboreal primates. There are 3 recognised species of orangutan. At the Omaha Zoo we can see the Bornean orangutan, native to the island of Borneo. Like many primates in Southeast Asia, orangutans are endangered. In fact, these are critically endangered due to rampant deforestation and poaching, of which palm oil harvesting is a leading cause. These stunning red apes are very solitary animals, unlike many other primates. They live in very small groups, usually only a female and her offspring, where males only spend about 10% of their lives with other orangutans. As a result of this solitary lifestyle, this makes them very vulnerable to poaching or destruction of their native habitat. They simply cannot cope with replacement of their native forests for commercial plantation forests which are used for palm oil. A highly arboreal animal calls for a complex climbing frame, often seen as difficult to build for. Orangutans, being a large great ape, requires the thick habitat logs to be able to traverse and possibly even branchiate. Omaha's design for orangutan frames includes a large climbing tree in the centre of the habitat, with large branches in every direction. However, I have took the creative approach to this design. The zoo still has a fairly minimalistic orangutan habitat design in the upper portion of the forest. Mixing this design with the more lively gibbon set up in the lead jungle, several trees connected by logs, is the ideal setup for an immersive orangutan habitat. The gentle sloped log frames allows the orangutans to possibly branchiate while looking naturalistic at the same time. I previously tried straight logs, but the result was too artificial, and it didn't encourage the orangutans to branchiate anymore, which kind of defeated the entire point of that. Given the length of the female orangutan habitat, 3 trees are used, 2 small trees on the 1 central large tree. For those interested, the central large tree is actually 15 meters or 50 feet tall, which is almost fully accessible for the orangutans, basically the height of 2 full trees stacked on top of each other, because that's literally how the tree was built. I started with a full tree at the top, then duplicated about 10 trees in the lower half to form a nice, large, naturalistic tree. This is why we can see the series of habitat logs climbing up the tree, as the lower half isn't accessible due to the overlapping material. To complete these trees is the addition of the full branches, giving the existing tree in the middle. Adding these branches is a nice touch, allowing the climbing frame to look even more natural with the habitat and food textures blending together. The branches also add more climbable points for the orangutans. Several branches placed at the very top of the full tree also improves the look, a tip I learned from the creation of the same kind of trees inside the lead jungle. 3 or 4 branches are placed at the top of the tree for this. The foliage for the habitat follows the typical North American temperate theme, basically the standard foliage found throughout the Omaha Zoo. This is extremely important for those wanting a realistic zoo, as you can't just add lots of tropical Asian plants for this orangutan habitat. Our zoo isn't anywhere near tropical biome, so that'll be extremely unrealistic. A temperate theme for this habitat doesn't mean it needs to look awful though. A mix of buffalo grass, creosote bushes, bramble bushes, dog bushes, ash trees and sycamore maple trees blends in well with the temperate biome and the climate frame. It gives us an immersive forest theme for the orangutans. You don't need a giant kapok or strangler fig tree to pull this off. Given the hillside location of the habitat, I thought some faux rocks would also work well here. Not too much to overwhelm the forest theme, but just enough to add some character, especially on the steeper right side of the habitat. I chose a variety of flat rocks to allow the orangutans to access the rock surfaces, and not too much to block out all the traversable space they need. That's the upper orangutan forest complete. We didn't see the construction of the male orangutan habitat, but it follows a very similar design as the female habitat, just on a smaller scale. The next addition to the orangutan forest is the Clare's Falls, a large cascading waterfall named for Clare Hubbard, the orangutan forest's primary donor, which, like the family names we discussed earlier in this episode. Creating a tall cascading waterfall easy enough. I just used several of the aquatic park waterfalls, leading from the female orangutan habitat to the bottom of the orangutan forest. This waterfall takes two directions that both will end up in a shallow pool filled with rocky pebbles. Creating this pool starts off a glass barrier wrapped around in an oval-like shape at the bottom of the falls. The waterfalls and pool all need to be blended together with a natural coverage of rocks, hiding all the ugly waterfall parts and glass barriers. This can be a little difficult as building a naturalistic rock face, especially one this high, isn't the easiest of tasks. Careful use of all the larger faux rocks allows for a wide variety of textures to prevent any repetition. For the pool, large and small faux rocks are used in 3 different colours to create a pool bottom. Particularly light grey and dark green is chosen. With all the tropical landscapes in Indonesia, waterfalls are very common through the many islands in Southeast Asia. The rugged volcanic landscape and abundant rainfall thanks to the tropical climate that feeds the country's many rivers and streams. One of the iconic waterfalls is found on the island of Java, south of the islands of Sumatra and Borneo. Tumpak Siwu, or called the 1,000 Waterfalls, is a very large cascading waterfall tumbling down a steep cliff. The site of 1,000 waterfalls plummeting 120 metres or 400 feet, surrounded by lush tropical foliage, is what we can imagine waterfalls would look like in such a diverse landscape. Of course, we don't have that luxury at the Omaha Zoo. There won't be much lush tropical foliage surrounding the waterfall, so we'll have to settle with some bamboo and temperate trees. We already have the traditional house designs of Indonesia, so that leaves us with other obvious choices of architecture: a stone temple. Indonesia is famous for its ancient Buddhist monuments, particularly in the island of Java. Dating from the 9th century, the Borobudur Temple is the largest Buddhist temple in the world, and along with other famous sites like Angkor Wat in Cambodia, it ranks as one of the great archaeological sites of Southeast Asia. Generally though, we can expect such a temple is very tedious to build. Each platform of the temple takes precise effort to build with the layered temple blocks to create the unique temple look. The temple in the orangutan forest follows a very similar theme to the Borobudur Temple. Grey temple stone with multiple stacked platforms decorated with mound-like domes called a stupa. A stupa generally is a domed Buddhist monument containing relics and serving as a place of meditation. At the Borobudur Temple, many of these stupas contain a statue of Buddha. For this temple build, I follow the same design that Omaha chose. The tropical park has these earthenware pots with a perfect size for 2 sizes of stupa. The larger one follows the design on the Borobudur Temple more closely, while the smaller one complements the larger one. Each of these decorate all the platforms of the temple, adding a uniquely Southeast Asian theme to an otherwise bland temple structure. The temple isn't just for looks, however. Siamang gibbons have taken over the temple, and inside we will find indoor habitat for these gibbons. This isn't like a wow indoor habitat though, it's basically a square primate shelter full of climbable ropes and vines. Nice enough, but kind of a letdown considering this is a new development for the zoo. The Siamangs were not here previously. The shelter consists of 2 elevated square nets supported by a range of ropes connecting them to each other and floor. The idea is for this to be fully accessible using the Planet Zoo ropes and the liana vines. Working with all the curved ropes in indoor space is a little annoying though to get them all to line up properly. Hanging vines and a long bedding supported by tropical leaves and oceana thatch pieces support the main climbing frame inside the shelter. The gibbons love to branchiate on the hanging vines, which should provide some fantastic views for guests from the viewing window. Finally, some yellow spotlights are added to brighten up this shelter, continuing the same kind of lighting used in the elevator building. White light I feel is a little too harsh for the tropical temple theme, where yellow feels a little more natural. Yes, we skip another outdoor habitat build, but it's really just this orangutan habitat in a slightly different way. The same climbing tree, log branches and such are used to create a natural habitat for the gibbons. Located behind the gibbons is what I feel is the crown jewel of the orangutan forest build, the indoor orangutan habitat. We often don't see indoor habitat built from me, as guests really do need to see it for me to build it. It's a simple rule that allows me to focus on spending time detailing exteriors and focusing on highly detailed interiors where there's an actual need for it. This building isn't following an Indonesian theme at all. This is a standard North American building hidden by the rock wall in the Siamang habitat. So simple slate roof and plaster walls is all that is needed. The main difference though is the addition of 3 large skylights to provide plenty natural light inside for the indoor orangutan habitat. Metal beams support the skylight trim and a large rectangular glass is built into the skylight without any overlapping glass or other texture glitches that would otherwise ruin the look of the skylight. As this is a pretty big skylight, I can't afford to have any building problems arise, as it would be extremely obvious from the path inside. Now for the difficult part. Starting an ambitious interior build is never simple, but I know that the key to this is starting with the paths, so that the general shape of the guest path can be realised. The orangutan habitat is located inside this large space and lots of glass barriers are needed for the viewing. Curved paths means curved glass, and curved glass is very painful to work with. I do wish there was an updated tool to manually make the desired curve, but no, we have to fight with the barrier and path system. The idea is for this to use the existing paths as a guideline for the glass, then replace the entire indoor path with the rustic stone slab path. The grey asphalt is not at all what I want to use inside this building. The glass is placed in various parts and locations where there will be viewing. I'm obviously not going to wrap the entire path in glass, as this is a unique way of habitat viewing. There are many different kinds of viewing in this orangutan habitat, offering both privacy to the orangutans in areas and great viewing angles for guests in the desired locations. Once barrier work is done, the path was completely replaced and any terrain gaps were filled in with these red plaster trim, which I thought was a nice touch to blend in with the red wood theme around the orangutan forest. The next step naturally is to cover the path sides with the Indonesian brick wall, as the next step to build the guest viewing area. My favourite viewing area built inside this habitat is this angled viewing area that just juts out into the habitat. 3 angled glass windows are bordered with temple support beams, which will be used for almost all the viewing areas. To increase realism for these windows, black wooden slats are placed in the window edges to create a window border. Many zoo viewing areas will often have this. In addition to the larger viewing windows, there are also small square windows at several points inside the building. I personally love making the smaller window areas as it focuses the view into one point of the habitat. Not easy though when the window's on a curve and the smaller brick wall pieces don't really want to line up properly. The walls now have been covered with a set of black 2D arch shapes for the interior roof. If anyone remembers back to the Houston Zoo Natural Encounters building, this follows a very similar approach. A black roof supported by a maze of metal beams, and air conditioning pipes is semi-hidden by thin, flat foliage. In particular, the wisteria fill plants are perfect for this. This is really the only time I've ever found a use for these plants. Both the small and large wisteria fill are used as a layer of green, lush foliage, essentially mimicking a tree canopy above guests' heads. This hides all the ugly interior roof we really don't want guests to see. Basket ferns and kahakaha plants are also used to add some variety in the roof canopy. That's not all though, this roof is rather busy with the addition of orange lights. This is the start of the interior lighting, so the Planet Zoo hanging lamps are great to light up the roof section, while the main lighting will be done with spotlights. The interior is really gloomy currently, so heavy lighting work is needed to bring this indoor forest passage to life. Spotlights both above and below the guest path are used to create an orange tropical forest light, illuminating all the tropical foliage on the roof, also helping light up the brick walls. I have the tree canopy but no trees yet. Thankfully a blueprint set of faux trees is perfect for this, as I've already used some of these inside the elevator building. The faux trees are placed along the brick walls, easily creating a forest path and breaking up the endless amount of brick walls we see inside the orangutan viewing. The trees are rotated in several positions to ensure the trees don't block too much on the path and helps minimise the repetitive nature of the faux trees. It's particularly challenging for the trees on the habitat side, as these are angled trees leaning into the habitat. Unlike the outside foliage, the inside can afford some nice tropical plants. In particular, there's an Indonesian flower exhibit showcasing the diversity of the Indonesian forest. Iconic plants such as the Taita Maram and Rafflesia are quite difficult to use in a realistic setting, but this exhibit is the perfect place for them. Various tropical plants that I'm hoping are somewhat Indonesian are placed on the bed of milk here. A large colourful sign also introduced guests to the plants of Indonesia and how diverse the forests of Indonesia are. Behind the plants, a small replica of a strangler fig tree, using a faux tree, faux branches and the strangler fig roots helps complete this nice foliage exhibit. With the guest path finished, including the addition of various basket ferns and vines to complete the tropical forest theme, the indoor orangutan habitat can finally start. The theme of the habitat is a tricky one, especially the rule of absolutely no foliage whatsoever, so I'm going to have to get creative on how to manage this in a large habitat. Starting off, several large areas of bedding for the orangutans are built. A blend of bedding, tropical leaves and oceania thatch pieces are used. The thatch pieces in particular help blend each of the bedding together and create a more realistic bedding area rather than just having a sea of bedding which will look extremely bland. In the middle of the habitat, a shallow pool is built, following the standard method of a realistic pool with a concrete bottom. To do this, the limestone pillar, the smallest 1 meter variant, is perfect for this style of pool. The pillar is placed on its side, buried about halfway, and are placed all around the pool, following the water's edge. Just a tiny bit tedious to get all the pillars lined up, and no terrain issues here helps this. As this is for orangutans, a large amount of climbing ropes and logs are needed to help bring this indoor habitat to life. Simply the same kind of frame used elsewhere in the orangutan forest works here as well. The only difference is the thinner logs are coloured black to match the ones found inside the real indoor habitat. Maybe getting a bit repetitive now, but yes, the larger climbing tree is also used here. I'm not really in the mood at this stage to build an entirely new climbing tree when I know this one works and looks great for an orangutan habitat. Some minor fixes to the climbing tree are needed to fit inside the indoor habitat, as it's not really a good idea to have the orangutans really close to the skylights. Knowing how glitchy the climbing is, they will magically transfer themselves to the outside. The indoor habitat is looking pretty good now, despite no foliage to support the terrain. The last addition is this tree root-like frame connecting this raised bedding to the lower habitat. A wide, complex set of curved logs is never going to work, so a mix of logs and branches will hopefully encourage the orangutans to use it. I chose to have 2 sets of these root frames so they can travel from one to the other, as the bedding itself is barely accessible. Carved logs all intersecting each other at the top will hopefully allow each frame to connect to each other. In addition to the logs, the climbable African branches help fill in the gaps between the larger logs to create a believable tree root frame. Large logs by themselves really don't look that nice. I don't think the branches actually work though. The sharp curve needed for the two pieces of branch will likely prevent the orangutans from using them. Well, by their own at least. Alright, we have built so much this episode and we haven't actually seen everything just yet, so enjoy this tour of Omaha's orangutan forest. We are currently on the other side of the desert dome. Its massive structure is impossible to miss around the zoo. We are welcome to the orangutan forest with this Indonesian inspired sign with an orangutan model sitting on top of this broken tree. This colourful building entrance leads us to the elevators, which we will use shortly. But first let's explore the upper orangutan forest. The larger wooden boardwalk gives guests a great view of the 2 outdoor orangutan habitats, both of which are completely enclosed in mesh. These are very busy habitats in terms of climbing frames and foliage, so spotting orangutan can be a little difficult at times. However, it's hard to miss the iconic red ape. Here's a female orangutan, one of 3 inside this habitat. The viewing shelter here allows for some easier viewing, but still mesh right in front of us sadly. It's hard to understand just how big these climbing frames are from this boardwalk until we see an orangutan on them. These 15-metre tall climbing trees are massive, with so many climbable points around the habitat. Continuing on to the male orangutan habitat, we also find the signage for these Bornean orangutans. A nice map shows us the range of the orangutan who live in the rainforests of Indonesian Borneo. 2 male orangutans can be found in this habitat for the sake of more activity. I know the real zoo and most orangutan bachelor habitats will only feature 1 male. Similar climbing frames can be seen, allowing the orangutans to branchiate on these curved logs, but sadly not much activity today. Heading back up the boardwalk, that's all the action we will see here of the orangutans. Naturally, with 3 females, we are far more likely to see them climbing these really tall climbing frames. The building we see with Indonesian theme is the zoo's elevator building. The building brings guests 18 metres down to the bottom of the zoo. We can also get some more views of the female orangutan habitat here on the left side. If guests are lucky, they will see orangutans on the climbing frame, offering a fantastic view of these red apes. Around the corner, as I completely messed up the building shape, a viewing area with benches offers the best view of the orangutan habitat. Great timing here as we can see one of the females right up close, climbing down one of the smaller faux trees. Heading back, we see the elevators. This sign tells us these lead to the lower orangutan forest, Gorilla Valley and Sea Lion Shores. First though, let's take a look at these windows. The zoo dubs this the best view in the zoo, or well, will be when I expand into the Gorilla Valley and beyond. We can get some great views of the Clare Falls, the edge of the orangutan habitat without much action, and looking 18 metres down, there's the Siamang Gibbons. Now obviously it's not going to be likely you'll spot a gibbon from up here. The distance and maze of climbing logs makes this a little difficult. To the right, we see the large indoor orangutan building. There's no need to hide this from guests, but it does offer insight to what a zoo backstage can look like. Alright, let's take a ride in the elevator, then down to the lower forest. At the bottom, we enter the lower elevator building, which is very nicely themed. There's also a pair of signs here introducing us to the main concern of the Indonesian rainforest, palm oil production. Palm oil is generally a hot topic these days, as it's clearly known as a driving cause of why orangutans and gibbons are endangered. So we get a choice here. We can head outside, or we can head to the right to see the orangutans inside. Naturally, we go right. First we get the first clear view of the Siamang Gibbons, a habitat full of climbing logs and natural trees. I do love how dense the viewing area feels with all the trees and climbing logs obscuring the view like in a real forest. If lucky like we are just now, gibbons can be seen travelling along the many logs before disappearing again. Inside this building we follow a tropical forest trail. Several educational signs tell us interesting facts about the Siamang or the orangutan. Here's a view into the indoor orangutan habitat, a pretty large habitat with absolutely no foliage but lots of bedding and climbing frames. A temple-like theme can be seen around the habitat along with these really large skylights, introducing natural light into this large indoor space. Large endless amounts of tropical foliage and tree trunks decorate the guest viewing area. In between the ample viewing windows we get to see into, like this sign here tells us orangutans are solitary animals, rather unique among primates who are known as social animals. Especially the males, they definitely prefer to be alone than in mixed large ape groups. This is absolutely not the case with Siamangs, who are very social animals. This is actually my first large-scale indoor primate habitat. I'm surprised that a large habitat with no foliage turned out pretty good. Although I guess having a 15-metre tall climbing tree helps fill that space. We got another sign here, this time for the orangutan communication. Especially for male orangutans and why they have their unique face shape compared to the females. I guess all these viewing points here can get a lot samey, but it's nice to get a chance to see the orangutans up close, at least once when travelling around the indoor habitat. Lots of the bedding is close to the windows for this purpose. On the other end of the habitat, these curved glass windows give us a great view of the male orangutan, who's enjoying time in this patch of leaves. Alright, so that's the orangutan habitat, 3 in total, so hopefully we got some nice views of the iconic red apes of Indonesia. The path then turns towards the lively tropical exhibit of foliage. Indonesian plants to be precise. We can see and probably smell the iconic Indonesian flowers like Rafflesia and Titan Aram. Signage helps educate us about the diversity of plants in Indonesia. Over 40,000 species is absolutely insane. Titan Aram, which can grow up to 3 meters tall, steals the show with its spectacular display. Lastly, inside this building we get a view of the indoor Siamang habitat. This is connected to the outdoor habitat so Siamangs can choose inside or outside. They seem to prefer in here with the abundance of climbable vines which they love to hang from, like this guy in the corner just chilling away. Even more signage here, the heat is on. It's all about climate change and its effects on primates like orangutans and gibbons. The zoo says they provide comfortable shelter all year round for their animals, especially noting during extreme weather for the safety of the animals. Alright then, let's head back outside. We enter the temple-themed portion of the orangutan forest here, with the Siamang shelter being this impressive temple building, decorated with lots of those Indonesian Buddhist domes. We now reach the viewing areas for the Siamang habitat. The shelters feature this Indonesian roof design like the elevator building. Now, for the less educated guests, gibbons are not monkeys, despite how common it is to call them that. The sign hopefully tries to help guests, but I doubt it actually works. Inside the Siamang habitat, a natural habitat full of these climbing trees and natural trees make this a great spot to view the Siamangs. That is, of course, if they are actually active. Right ahead we get a view of the sheer size of the elevator building and where we started from. Here's the general signage for the Siamang, an endangered gibbon that have very loud calls. It's no wonder iPlay was signed off when building for these animals. A nice waterfall and pool fill this side of the habitat, where the temple and trees dominate the other side. So that's kind of the orangutan forest finished. There's the elevator building here, and to the right is the cascading Clears Falls, and these artworks of swinging primates, Siamang on the left and orangutan on the right. The Omaha Zoo is surely starting to heat up as a serious recreation now. Thanks for watching everyone, and see you next time.